Hey, is Marie making the food to celebrate the new year this time? My mother-in-law immediately reacted to this, waving her hands in front of her face and laughing. No way, that's impossible. My daughter-in-law can't cook at all. She's a hopeless housewife who can't even make food for the New Year's celebration. I do all the cooking around here. Her laughter was extremely unpleasant. It wasn't a joke, nor was it just going along with the mood of the moment. It was nothing but an insult to me. I had reached my breaking point. My next move was to fight back. I had to give it my all. I am Marie, a 28-year-old who just got married last year. I'm a full-time housewife who enjoys cooking. Though it hurts sometimes that my husband is content with anything as long as it's edible, he's kind, and we live in a newly remodeled large house with a spacious island kitchen I've always longed for. I guess it's the ideal life, but I had a problem since the beginning of my marriage. It was my mother-in-law. She claims to be good at cooking and thinks I'm a failure of a wife who can't cook. Well, I could endure it if she just thought that, but she was a very troublesome type who would go around saying it. Just yesterday, she was complaining to the neighbor's wife, loud enough for me to hear, while I was hanging laundry. My daughter-in-law can't even cook properly! Ugh, it's terrible! I wonder what kind of education she had. My son is so unfortunate. I can't believe it. I was so angry that I almost broke the clothespin in my hand. I could endure her criticizing me, but I couldn't stand her speaking ill of my parents. I deeply respect my parents and have learned countless things from them. Yet, without knowing anything, or even trying to know, my mother-in-law was bad-mouthing me every day. Today, too, she seemed busy ruining my reputation, and I could hear her shrill voice gossiping with the neighborhood. She doesn't even know how to use seasoning. I have to cook, or else there's no taste. Why did my son marry someone like her? Then the neighbors chimed in. Freda has had it tough too. And why don't you teach her? I really wish they would stop. I gripped the glass in my hand so hard that it cracked. In the evening, when my husband Gregory came home, my mother-in-law was in the shower. I saw my chance and decided to unload everything I'd been holding back on Gregory. Can't you do something about your mother? She's going around the neighborhood every day saying I can't cook. Can't you say something to her, Gregory? As I put away the jacket Gregory handed me, I told him about my mother-in-law's behavior. Gregory doesn't particularly love his mother, and he does care for me, so I thought he would defend me. I believed he would sympathize and say, that must have been tough. But what came out of his mouth was entirely different. Well, Mom has always been particular about cooking, Gregory said, scratching his head and looking troubled. Particular about cooking? I almost blurted out. With that heavy seasoning? I stared at Gregory in disbelief, but he was dead serious. Come on, she's a good cook, right? Well, I don't really know much about good or bad cooking. Anyway, please get along with Mom. That's a wife's duty, isn't it? With that, Gregory left the room. Is this a joke? That was the only thought left in my mind. A good cook? A wife's duty? What does that even mean? All sorts of frustrations rushed into my heart at once. To be honest, and I hate to say it, but my mother-in-law's cooking is far from delicious. She's been in charge of all the cooking for the past year to prevent me from doing it, but I've never found it tasty. She's convinced that strong seasoning equals delicious. Gregory, who grew up with that taste, always finishes his meal without a fuss. But I honestly struggle to eat it every day. Continuing to eat such heavily seasoned food is definitely not good for my health, and I even feel a sense of crisis that it might ruin my taste buds. I managed to eat it somehow, fearing what would be said if I left anything. Alone in the quiet bedroom, I let out a big sigh. The shock wasn't that Gregory didn't criticize his mother's cooking. It's a wife's duty, huh? It was that he didn't take me seriously. At times like this, I missed the taste of my parents' home cooking. A few weeks passed, and the atmosphere of the year-end became more pronounced. It would be my first New Year since getting married. In this house, it's a tradition for relatives to gather every New Year and eat a feast prepared by my mother-in-law. When Gregory told me this, I secretly thought, really? Even though I just responded with, oh. The relatives who come to eat my mother-in-law's cooking every year must be used to it by now, but I can't help but feel sorry for them. I may be criticized by my mother-in-law for having bland taste or not being able to cook properly, but I believe in my cooking skills. I trust my parents who taught me the techniques. I want to cook for everyone somehow, and I want to correct Gregory's taste buds. With that determination, I decided to ask my mother-in-law, even though I knew it was a long shot. Mother-in-law? About the food for the New Year's celebration? I called out to her back as she was energetically taking out large plates and pots in the kitchen. I'll help too. But the mother-in-law who turned around had already refused with her expression. Marie, you can't even cook properly, so how can you make food for the New Year's celebration? You know that not just our family, but all the relatives are gathering, right? That's why I'm saying this. I married into this family. It's my duty as a wife to... I desperately argued, but my mother-in-law just shook her head. No, no. Do you want to create a weird atmosphere right at the beginning of the new year? Everyone comes to eat my cooking. We can't disappoint them. If you understand, please don't get in the way. I could only bite back my frustration as I stared at her turned back. The new year arrived and the relatives began to gather. There were about 20 of them, more than I thought. Most of them I hadn't seen since the wedding. Marie, Happy New Year! Oh my, it's been a while. Have you gotten used to married life yet? I guided them to the very spacious dining room, exchanging greetings with each of the relatives who crowded in. When I first came to this house, I was surprised by its vastness, but it seems the unusually large dining room was designed for occasions like this. In the dining room, my mother-in-law was already talking with the relatives who had arrived. At that moment, one of the relatives said, "By the way, is Marie making the feast this year?" My mother-in-law immediately reacted to this, waving her hands in front of her face and laughing. That's impossible. My daughter-in-law can't cook at all. She's a hopeless housewife who can't even make a New Year's celebration meal. I do all the regular cooking, you know. Her laugh was very unpleasant. It wasn't a joke, nor was it just going along with the mood. It was simply an insult to me. I had reached my breaking point. Mother-in-law? Then please, let me make the New Year's celebration meal. If it tastes bad, how about you make a palate-cleansing dish? The room went quiet at my proposal. After a beat, the relatives began to murmur. Well, I don't want bad food, but... Well, but experience is everything. Isn't it fine? Yeah, if it fails, Frida will take care of it, it seems. My mother-in-law, who had been silently listening to the relatives' conversation, seemed to give up, sensing that the mood was shifting towards let's let Marie try. Well then, I'll let you practice this year. Her words hinted at reluctance, but now I could cook. Ladies and gentlemen, please indulge this hopeless housewife's whims this year. Oh, I had plenty to say to her. My heart was filled with the fact that I could cook proudly in front of all these witnesses. Now it's time for a counterattack. All that's left is to give it my all. In conclusion, the cooking was perfect. Before the beautifully arranged feast on the large plate, exclamations of admiration rose from the relatives. Wow, it looks delicious! Well done, Marie! Really, this isn't something just anyone can make. Among such comments, my mother-in-law, who had gone shopping for the palate-cleansing dish, returned and glanced at my cooking. Looks good, I guess, but it's probably tasteless. She emphasized the word probably, clearly unwilling to acknowledge me, and then deliberately said, Well, I must make the palate-cleansing dish, and hurried into the kitchen. Ignoring her, I went around, handing out paper plates and forks to the relatives. Everyone, please enjoy. Even as she headed to the kitchen, my mother-in-law's back was clearly focused on us. The relatives, in turn, took the food and tasted it. This is... someone muttered, their voice seemingly trembling. My mother-in-law laughed as if she were thoroughly pleased. See, I told you! This is why she's a hopeless daughter-in-law. Everyone, you don't have to force yourselves to eat. I'll make a palate-cleansing dish right away. Her voice was triumphant, but it was soon drowned out by voices of joy. This is the first time I've tasted such delicious New Year's celebration food. This is restaurant level. It's even better. It's like a hotel course meal. Marie, where did you learn to make this? Huh? Standing in front of the lively crowd centered around the food, my mother-in-law was left speechless. Without anyone paying attention to my mother-in-law, all eyes were focused on me. Actually, I began deciding to reveal the truth to everyone. My family owns a historic French restaurant, known as a place where you can eat authentic French cuisine. It's even listed in the Michelin Guide. My father, the current 5th generation, oversees everything related to cooking, and my mother, who also comes from a family of chefs, supports him devotedly. I grew up watching my parents, and by the time I was in upper elementary school, I was learning to cook from them in earnest. My brother is set to take over, and even though I've left home after getting married, and probably won't be involved in the restaurant in the future, all the cooking knowledge I've learned from my parents is within me, and I'm proud of it. That's why I couldn't stand my mother-in-law's words and actions that denied my cooking skills. To deny my cooking is to deny my parents, and the restaurant that my ancestors have passed down through generations. That's the situation. Actually, I did tell you before we got married, mother-in-law. My mother-in-law, who tends to disregard others and look down on me, seemed to think of me as just a daughter of a small country restaurant. Furthermore, Gregory, who is utterly indifferent to food, probably doesn't even understand the difference between a family restaurant and authentic French cuisine. I can't help but wonder why I married into this family. Marie! When I turned to the voice calling me, several eyes were looking at me, somewhat hesitantly, but expectantly. Can we eat more? I want to eat more too! Despite the substantial volume of the feast I had prepared, it had been completely consumed. Suddenly, I felt a surge of happiness, and almost cried. Being praised for the food I made should have been normal before I got married, but it seems I had completely forgotten that feeling in the past year. Yes, I'll make more right away! I dashed out of the room, passing by my mother-in-law, who was still standing still. Come to think of it, she had bought some ingredients. I decided to serve these people with all my might, no matter what I might be told later. Mother-in-law, I'll use the ingredients, okay? I gave a warning, but as I thought, there was no response. The ingredients were left as they were in the kitchen. As I reached to look inside the supermarket bag, someone entered the kitchen. Will you teach us how to cook too? I looked up to see about 5 women standing in a row. They ranged in age, from around my age to about my mother-in-law's age, but their eyes all sparkled the same way. The food was so delicious. We want to be as good as you. In retrospect, those words must have changed something inside me. I had never thought about teaching cooking before, but if there were people who felt that way about me, and if I could be of any help, I wanted to teach as much as I could. That's what I thought. With pleasure! I answered with a smile, and the room burst into excitement. Everyone was talking about how they would surprise their husbands by becoming good at cooking. And so, the impromptu cooking class began. Watching us cook with serious faces from a distance, my mother-in-law was silently cleaning up, and the finished dishes were met with more praise. I have to say, I actually found Frida's cooking a bit too salty for my taste. Marie's cooking is more delicate and refined, truly professional French cuisine. While I was happy to be recognized and celebrated by everyone, I felt a bit awkward towards my mother-in-law and smiled vaguely. She didn't interrupt and focused on cleaning up. Just as I was thinking about saying something to ease the situation, Gregory delivered the final blow. I really prefer Marie's cooking. Mom's strong flavors make me worry about salt and health. From now on, Marie should do the cooking, regularly. With those words, my mother-in-law seemed to have completely lost her place, and before I knew it, she had retreated to her room. After that, word of my cooking skills spread among the relatives, and I started receiving requests to teach cooking classes. At first, I hesitated, but remembering the excitement of the small cooking class I held on New Year's, and thinking that if people wanted my cooking skills, I accepted the request. Word of mouth spread quickly, and before I knew it, I was being featured in the media as a housewife who cooks authentic French cuisine. Now I receive teaching requests from all over the country. Life is truly unpredictable, and this was an unexpected turn of events. But I even had a conversation with my father in a cooking magazine. As for my mother-in-law, who had been spreading the word in the neighborhood that I was a bride who couldn't even cook properly, she stopped commenting on cooking altogether after that day. She stopped cooking altogether, and now I hold all the authority over cooking in the house. And we live peacefully, albeit busily.